So now that it's back to being kind of miserable weather outside, at least here in the UK anyway, it's probably a good time to stay inside warm and cozy with a new home theatre projector, right? Well, I guess Viewsonic thought so too, since they sent over their X10-4K for me to look at. Yes, that's right, you heard me right, 4K. Let's see if it's any good though. So of course we have to look at that big claim first. Yes, it's 4K. It's actually proper 4K and is a very crisp image, especially when watching, proper 4K UHD content. Colors are actually pretty great to the eye as well, as it's a DLP LED projector, so you actually don't have to replace any bulbs anytime soon, which is obviously great. And while it is an LED projector, it only claims around about 1,000 lumens, or at least ANSI lumens anyway, which is not the brightest, and in testing it was even a little bit lower than that, but it's still bright enough for basically any sort of dark or mostly dark rooms. So if you're using this as a home theatre setup, then it might be a good shout. I should stress this is not a gaming projector by any stretch of the imagination, for a number of reasons. The main one is the input lag. With frame interpolation turned on, which is on by default it seems, that the input lag using one of the HDMI inputs was well over 200 milliseconds. There was a noticeable lag between me moving the mouse and seeing the cursor move on screen. Even with frame interpolation turned off, in games, for example, like CSGO, you're looking at, I think, 117 milliseconds of input lag, which is the lowest that I could get it to go. Obviously, that's total system input lag from, you clicking the button to something happening on screen. But to give you context, stuff like the Optima projectors I've reviewed recently had more like 60 milliseconds instead of almost double that. Now, software-wise, this thing has its own operating system, which is kind of like Android TV, but definitely not. It's pretty clunky and has more than a few bugs, one of which was that the maximum Wi-Fi password length seems to be the size of the box if you're using the included remote to enter it, but if you plug in a keyboard, that problem seems to go away. You do also have an app store that you can browse through and install stuff like Plex, but I would say that Plex was, at best, kind of buggy and at worst entirely unusable. You do also get two Harman Kardon speakers built in, but in my experience they sounded pretty muffled and weren't the most enjoyable listening experience, which does kind of cancel out the feature that lets you turn off the projector part of the projector and just use this as a Bluetooth speaker, as it's not really the best experience. Physically, it looks great. You've got a gunmetal metal shell, which is actually a pretty nice premium feel, with a mild addition of a cheap plastic knob on top. You do also have a leather wrapped carrying handle, which definitely feels sturdy and great in the hand. And you even have a leather wrapped magnetic cover on the back of the device that you can use to cover the rear I/O when it's not in use. And speaking of the I/O, it's actually pretty comprehensive. You have AC in as well as a Wi-Fi dongle slot that we'll talk about in a second, as well as SPDIF, audio in and out, two HDMI ports and a USB-C port that can be used as a sort of display port in kind of thing. You also have a micro SD card slot, gigabit Ethernet, and a USB 2 and 3 ports available for you as well. That Wi-Fi dongle slot I mentioned earlier is just really confusing, because it's just an embedded USB port inside a slot with a cover over it that is exclusively for the included cheap USB Wi-Fi dongle that comes in the box, which in and of itself has terrible signal because, it's a cheap Wi-Fi dongle with a cover over it inside a metal and plastic housing, which, to give you context, it was less than a meter from my wireless access point and only had 2 bars out of 4 of signal. And so clearly they've thought that this projector should have Wi-Fi. They've even gone to the trouble of moving that USB port so far into the projector and putting a cover over it so that you can plug in the Wi-Fi dongle. Why didn't they just include Wi-Fi in the projector itself? They would then be able to run a much longer antenna to get much better signal, but instead they went for this really weird solution where they include a cheap USB Wi-Fi dongle in the box. I cannot understand that. What I can understand is that, at least on paper, this thing looks great. You've got a crisp 4K image with reasonable brightness, you've got great I/O, some really nice touches in terms of really quiet fans, and overall a pretty premium aesthetic and feel. But for me, it just falls short of being a truly desirable option, one that costs around about £1,300 at the time of filming. Now that's not bad for a 4K kind of home theater projector like this one, but when they've made such weird design choices with stuff like that Wi-Fi dongle that's embedded in the back of the I/O casing, or the operating system that could easily be replaced by something like Android TV, which would be a much better and more refined experience, it just makes it pretty hard for me to overall recommend to you. Now with all of that said, those are my thoughts. I would love to hear yours in the comments down below. What do you think of the Projector? Is it something that you'd pick up yourself, or are you not necessarily the target market for it? Would you prefer a gaming version or not? Or would you prefer something that's a little bit more refined, for example with the operating system, the Wi-Fi? Let me know what you think in those comments down below. Of course, if you want to see more videos like this one every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, do hit that subscribe button with a bell notification icon to be notified of those new videos. And if you want to check out the Projector and see pricing when and where you watch this, do take a look at the link in the description down below. That'll take you to your local Amazon store where you can see all of that. You can also check out the rest of the links if you want to support the channel. There's Amazon and Overclocked UK affiliate links, which don't cost you anything to use, but massively help me out when you do use them. Or there's also stuff like merch for hoodies or t-shirts like this one, or a load of other designs, including some new ones that I'm very excited to show off soon. And there's also stuff like Patreon if you want to get cool rewards and support me directly too. There's also stuff like private internet access, which is a great and cheap VPN, or Humble Bundle for cheap games to support charities too, and there's plenty of other videos over there if you want to keep watching, but otherwise that is pretty much it. If you've got any questions, leave those in the comments down below, and we'll see y'all in the next video.